I went on a mission to Mars. Hi, welcome. My name's Rory McCaw. Welcome to Self-Made Strategy. I'm a serial technology entrepreneur. I built an IT consulting company in 2001 and went on to build and then sell that company in 2018 for 8 figures. And I'm here to simply share my tips and tricks with you, some experiences I learned along the way, and hopefully I can accelerate your growth trajectory so that you can grow your business to greater heights than mine and in a shorter amount of time. So what do I mean by I went on a trip to Mars? I'm not Elon's buddy, so we're not heading to Mars together anytime soon. But we did this exercise around core values that was known as a mission to Mars exercise. And I would encourage you, if you don't have core values and a mission statement and a vision statement, to consider the mission to Mars exercise. And what we did was we got together as an executive group. So basically the 5 people, myself included, on our executive team. And we sat down with our coach, who was an EOS, an entrepreneurial operating system coach. And this individual was great. He described this exercise to us, and we then probably spent the better part of an hour going through this in small groups or doing some individual work as well. And the concept of the mission to Mars is you want to identify 3 people in your company today that exude the values that you want for the company. So give thought to who the 3 people are without even knowing your values. Try to identify the 3 people that you would pick, and then each individual that's at the table would pick 3 different people. And you'd then explain and put on the whiteboard or on post-it notes or tearaway paper, however you want to do it, or online, what those 3 core values are that you see within your individual, and then repeat that for everyone around the table. And this will come up with 5 people, it'll come up with 15 different core values. And then you'll go through the process of seeing which ones are similar, because there are a lot of similarity between words, and you'll pick those. So we came up with, in the end, 5 different people that we would send. And why would we send them to Mars? So the concept here is you're going to send them on a long journey. Obviously, it takes a long time to get to Mars, but you're also going to send them to a place where the people that they meet, the Martians, would probably not speak English. At least we're counting on the fact that they didn't speak English. So the people that they would encounter, the Martians, would have to understand from how those people act and operate what their core values were. So you want to think about values that you can just see within minutes or hours of dealing with these different individuals, that they just come through the individual and in their characteristics and how they operate. So you narrow it down to these, in our case, 15 different values. You then parse through those looking for similarities, and you combine those. And then you try to come up with a story. It doesn't have to be a long story, but a story around each one of the words that defines the core value. So we arrived at something we called APOC squared, or APOCC squared for the 2 C's. And that was agility, passion, ownership, commitment, and customer focus. And those were the things that we felt the people that we would send off to Mars would be able to exude to the Martians that they would meet on the planet of Mars. And then we came up with a story that aligned to each one of those values, because a single word can be misinterpreted. It's easy to build your own story around a word. So around, what does agility mean? Well, in our case, agility meant that we were small and nimble as a company, and we could do things quickly. So one of the stories around that was we're agile in how we can staff a project. We're agile in whether we can work on site or remote with a customer, which remote work was not something that was super popular when we were doing it. It was the minority in terms of how work was done, not the majority like it is today, maybe post-COVID. We were agile in being able to turn around statements of work in a very short amount of time. We tried to do that within 24 hours of having a customer call and identifying what it was the customer wanted in the project. So that was the agility piece. And we used those stories to help drive home what the core value was. And we did that for each one of our core values. The passion was easy because we had at one point up to 10 Microsoft MVPs on our team. And Microsoft MVPs and other technology professionals tend to be very passionate about the technologies that they're working with. So showing and exuding passion around the technology and wanting to help the customer, wanting to then explain how things work. There are a lot of folks in technology who like to do things and complete a task, but they don't like to share how it was done. So you're often left as the customer not understanding what you need to do to maintain this, or what you have to do if it breaks, or how you would even start researching and troubleshooting the issue if it broke. So our team was very passionate about explaining and training and sharing knowledge, whether that was through a formal training session, just informal conversations, whether it was side by side at someone's desk while they were doing something, so that the customer got comfortable with the technology that we were implementing. So that Mission to Mars exercise was really our first foray into defining our core values as a business. And that helped to then open up and allow us to identify what our mission was as a company and what our vision was as a company. And having those elements, they may seem fluffy and some people may roll their eyes at that. I was one of those prior to having these, but I really saw the benefit in understanding the why behind what we're doing. And it really helped during, say, even an interviewing period with a new potential hire, or in talking to a customer, or simply onboarding someone who's new to the organization. If you can give them examples of how those core values are relevant to them in the job or occupation that they're performing, then they can choose to align with those. And the beauty of that choice is that if they choose not to align with those, you know very quickly that they're on the wrong bus. And that individual, despite their skill set and maybe having an excellent skill set, pedigree, background, maybe being a top performer, if they can't align with your core values and your culture, then you need to get rid of those people, because they're just not a good fit. And they're going to end up being a bit of a disease or a cancer within your organization, because they're going to mock your core values, and they're going to then encourage other employees who do believe in your core values, but maybe are not 100% bought in. They're going to convince them how ridiculous these things are. They're going to come up with stories why these really aren't your core values, and come up with examples of how the company does something opposite the core values. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt, because it could be the company that's doing that. There's no question. You may have a really rotten culture, and that happens a fair bit, and that needs to be corrected at the top down. But when you have one bad apple, it leads to multiple bad apples, because they convince these other people who aren't sold of the fact that, well, here's an example of how it's not being followed. And in the end, it comes down to individuals that don't follow the core values, and that leads the business to not follow them. Now, an individual only has so much impact. Management can thwart that or try to stop that, and should step in if they're good leaders, but good leadership doesn't always exist. So if you're missing good leadership and the ability to step in and quash those things and change the narrative or change the story, to re-educate the employee on, no, what you're saying was clearly a mistake. That's not how things should have been done. We don't disagree that they were done that way, but that contradicted our core values. And that person has been spoken to and re-educated and brought up to speed on alternative approaches that are more in alignment with our core values. And that's where leadership is really key to your organization. And when you're talking to a potential seller and they come through, let's say your office, going back into the maybe pre-COVID office days, and you've got your core value words up on one of your walls in maybe a hallway or where your employees congregate, maybe it's a lunchroom, maybe it's the main open office area that everyone can see. If you can speak to those and share those confidently with your prospective purchaser and tell them a story that aligns with each one of them, and then they can start to actually see those core values being lived as they witness operations that are ongoing and start to work with and get a feel for the people in the company as they do their due diligence. That will help to solidify the message and will definitely add value to your organization. So I wouldn't skip over your mission, vision, and core values. It may not be something that you do on day one, but it's something that I would strongly consider, encourage you to consider as you start to grow above the $1 to $3 million revenue mark and start to introduce any level of management. So regardless maybe of the level of revenue, as soon as you start to bring in people that manage people, you want to start thinking about those core values so that you can share those values and the story associated with them and ingrain that in the folks that are managing, and they can ingrain that in the folks that they're managing. So I hope that helps, and if you like the videos, please hit the like and subscribe button. More great content will be coming your way.